Thank you all for joining us here today. And just to get things started, in the past 2 years, we've seen AI grow astronomically. It's become less of a conversation of what will AI be and now how AI is everywhere. So just to kick us off, I'm going to ask you to think even more in the future and let us know what you think AI foundationally and generationally will look like and where it's going in the next 5 years. I'll start with you.
First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity to come and speak to all of you and with such an amazing set of panelists. So the honest answer is that I don't know, and most of the people don't know. But for sake of answering this question, I definitely think that AI will move beyond the tool that we are seeing here and there. It will move beyond this, and it will sincerely and seriously get integrated in our lives. And when I say it will surpass the level of becoming an assistant, it will get embedded in our lives, in our ecosystem, in companies, in our work, everywhere.
And Mr. Besbes.
Yeah. Thank you again for the invitation and for the opportunity to join this panel. So indeed, I fully agree with Sanjay. I mean, I think no one knows where AI will be in 5 years. But what we do know is that in the same way that we had a decade of digital transformations, we're going to have a few years of AI transformations across large organizations. And that's going to take time because organizations are very complex objects and it cannot change from one day to the next. But what I'm also hopeful for is that we're going to see hopefully an acceleration in the process of scientific discovery that's going to be able to push the frontier around many topics that have been raised here, including healthcare.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Omar and Sanjay said, but maybe just to add, and it's tough to add to that, I think AI will make humans superhuman is where I would maybe leave it, because rather than thinking about AI as a tool or a co-worker, if we could think, like Sanjay said, embedding AI in every aspect, that it is beneficial for humans to probably start acting superhuman. And in there lies maybe the future that I see to your question.
I'm curious, Mr. Salil and Mr. Aluru, both of your companies approach AI from a hand-in-hand perspective instead of using AI as a tool, having it work hand-in-hand with humans. I'm curious why you think this approach is essential and how it differs from using AI as a tool and how we can sort of go forward with that methodology.
Would you like to take?
Sure, yeah. In our experience, I mean, just for context, we work predominantly with US enterprises. And in that experience over the last decade, what we've seen is instead of thinking about AI as a tool, which is almost AI in software kind of a mindset, which has been the last decade, we have to evolve into thinking about a central organizational brain, which is persistent in its memory, which is continuously improving in terms of compounding the intelligence with every human usage, piping back into intelligence for tomorrow, right? And those feedback loops and operation as a platform. So I actually think, like we said to the earlier question, AI cannot be thought of as a point solution anymore. You've got to have an organizational wide mindset, because in the future that we're going in, honestly, to your question, the companies that are going to win are the companies that learn faster than their competitors. And so it's all about the pace of learning. And if you could get AI plus human embedded in a way that AI is compounding intelligence with every usage, those are the companies that will actually create those compounding defensible modes to the discussion Omar and we were having earlier. But that's the crux in my view. But over to you, Sanjay.
But I fully agree. And what we have seen very recently that people used to say, or still they say that AI hallucinates, which it does. But look at the Iran, US and Israel war, that an American company was Anthropic, and American government said, since you are not playing by my rules, so you are not, they have put them in a certain category. That means AI must be delivering the kind of value which is very high for government of the US. But coming back to your point, so how it will, the human angle will remain very, very crucial. And I'm not saying now, for a foreseeable future, that when you integrate AI with human together, then the results are amazing. it becomes far superior. And we have seen that in the platforms that we are doing, the layers we are building, whichever domain that is, the result becomes much, much better.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Besbes, I'm curious, there's a constant conversation about how AI is replacing jobs, but there's less of a conversation about who is now having the power in a corporate structure when it comes to the use of AI. How does AI reshape the decision-making process within companies? Is it the engineers or the data owners or the leadership that has most control? And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
That's a great question, and it touches a little bit on how processes are going to be redrawn within companies. And I would say one possible answer is that possibly all of these constituencies will benefit from AI transformations. Of course, how can it make sense? In a way, because everyone will have the ability to interrogate these AI systems. And just to give you an example, a few months ago, I was sitting with the CEO of a large company who said how their own processes have changed. Now, before a board meeting, they don't ask anymore for the slide deck that has been filtered through 3 layers of management. They can have access to the unfiltered data and then interrogate it themselves to try to understand what are the right questions to ask based on the data that there is. So in some sense, leadership will benefit for sure, but I think there will be a feedback loop where other people will understand what are the first order questions that the company should be focusing on and redirecting the work accordingly.
Absolutely, and I'm curious to hear both of your perspectives on
So
how
I fully agree with what Dr. Omar said. To my mind, it should primarily remain with the leadership, because what is happening right now, and I'm saying this with experience from several countries, because AI is not only for the US, India, etc., etc. It is for the entire world. And when you we work a lot in Africa, and you go and talk to the leaders, and leaders, when I mean president, prime ministers, they don't really think this has come, not even coming, this has come, this is here. And if those leaders, or similarly the leaders in organization, they are not attentive about this, they are not sharp about this, then those organizations, those countries would be at a huge disadvantage. So it should primarily remain there, but like Dr. Omar said, it should be with all constituents, so that it could be driven in a way which is purposeful, which is responsible, which is in the long run beneficial to those organizations and those countries and societies.
Yeah, I think safety, trust, ethics, all of these are going to be incrementally important. I don't think we're still scratching the surface, so I don't have a perfect answer for you. But I think, like both the gentlemen said, there's a lot of work to be done, and it's an important area to focus on.
I'm also curious, we had a speaker yesterday who spoke about how in AI companies or AI forward companies, it's very important to have a human responsible behind each AI action, someone to be held accountable if something goes wrong. I'm curious, one, how you think this is possible when it comes to AI working, not as a tool, but as a service hand in hand with human workers, basically as a co-worker, if you may. And two, to what degree you think this is essential in this very fast-paced AI-focused world?
Go ahead, please.
So I think the mindset, if you go to, and I would just repeat what I said, if you go to organizations, any organization, I think people are still thinking AI is the job of some engineers. It is not. It is the job of the leadership to define the course of action for that organization, for that country. And then it flows beyond that. If that will not happen, it will happen in components and silos. But coming to your point of human intervention, that is a given. Without that, you cannot even build. Companies like us can go and tell you that we can do this for you, but without the participation of the other company which needs to get benefited, you cannot even build that.
Yeah, I'd say mixed answer in the sense that in certain low knowledge work or complexity scenarios where honestly it's just monotonous repetitive work that erstwhile robotic process automation was targeting, I think there is no need for humans anymore. And it's human over the loop. What I mean by that is humans observing, auditing the system, defining the guardrails, the monitoring protocol and whatnot. For high knowledge worker complexity or a mission critical scenario like healthcare, right? You do want a human in the loop every time. And somewhere in the middle would be what we call at Avataar as human on the loop, where AI does its own confidence scoring, defines when a human is needed, when it's lacking confidence, and accordingly loop in human employees while it otherwise loops in semi-autonomous, in a lack of better words. Today I can tell you that we at Avataar are driving, say for a US revenue cycle management of a healthcare company kind of perspective, driving 40-50% autonomous AI doing it because it's very confident, and for remaining 60% looping in humans and improving with every step.
There's a hybrid approach, right? In general, it's not necessarily every action, but processes, humans should be responsible. The buck has to stop with the human for process, for these repetitive tasks. But for high-stakes decisions, indeed, we will always need a human to sign off on these.
Definitely. So I'm also curious, everyone is now leaning into AI, thinking about how to adopt it across a variety of fields. What's one hard truth about AI adoption that most companies don't want to hear?
That's a tough one, but I'd say the power of compounding, and the ones that will get that at its essence for both data and the intelligence that comes out of data would be the eventual winners in the new era.
I guess AI transformation is hard, right? And that there's a lot of inertia within companies, and inertia has to be broken.
Fully agree. The mindset is really one of the biggest thing that you go and that's the biggest challenge that you face, and it depends. Different businesses have different kind of mindsets, but some of them are they have a mindset that it will not happen, it will not affect me. Some of them realize and they are moving faster. So I agree completely. Mindset and inertia.
So it's maybe to add, it's as much about technology than it is about company culture relating to the mindset.
Completely.
Yes.
And do you think that companies that are maybe slow to adopt AI or still hesitating will be behind the curve in the future?
100%. This is not even an option now. 100%, and the realization will be sooner than later.
And in the sphere of thinking about how to move your own companies forward and how to teach students or acknowledge what's going to happen in the future, while it's very unpredictable, what are some of the biggest risks that are on your mind, and how are you working to counter them?
Sorry.
What are some of the biggest risks on your mind at the moment?
So the biggest risk is, and we were discussing, the biggest risk for an organization like us is the talent. If you do not manage your talent well, if you do not get the best talent, then to my mind that is the biggest risk than anything else. Because if you can have that, and if you really second is focus and verticalization where you are. So if you spread yourselves too thin, then that is a challenge. But talent, I think, is the biggest risk.
I would say the biggest risk is not experimenting. Technology is evolving extremely fast. The time scale of the technology is dramatically different than that of organizations, that of institutions, including academic institutions. So we have to change the pace of experimentation that happens within organizations.
Yeah, I would echo both of them. AI will not replace human jobs. AI is going to replace organizations that don't adopt AI. And I think humans plus AI will replace humans. So that's the biggest risk in my view.
Can I ask you all in one sentence, what is the most important capability that every company will need to survive an AI-first economy?
The mindset, openness to do that.
Yeah, I would say adaptability. We don't know what the future has for us. We have to build the flexibility within companies to be ready for multiple futures.
Echo both of them, but just to add on, maybe the power to get out of the box and not be in the limitations of the past and the degrees of freedom and the constraints of the past, and reimagine their business model from scratch in an AI native way. It's tough to do that, but that is probably what's the best way to get there.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I think there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to AI and how it works, and particularly when you talk about agentic AI and, AI systems being autonomous to some extent and being able to make decisions. There's also an ongoing debate about how human AI is. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
How human AI is? AI is not human, but I think what we hear from the biggest companies, that is also not very far. It would have, so right now AI it remembers and it tells you, and of course there are different layers of intelligence, but I think soon we will also see when it has a bit of consciousness, it starts acting like human. I don't know how far that is, but if you have to believe the top leaders, it's not very far. So very soon in that sense.
That's tough to follow. But I'd say, no, I think human ingenuity is quite far ahead. And so I really don't buy the AI versus human story yet. Maybe in a future date, like Sanjay said, but today, at least from an algorithmic lens, find it hard to make that leap of faith that we're there. And so I think it's human plus AI, and therefore that being superhuman, I guess, making humans, that's a positive way of looking at the half class. There's always a half class empty view here, unfortunately.
I guess, yeah, I'll just add that in a way what's left, indeed, AI has a lot of powers, but humans have judgment. And in some sense, how do we have this judgment complement, AI is really the question going forward. It's a question for us as educational institutions, how do we develop that talent that has that judgment and can add on to AI and develop that critical thinking? Because, indeed, we have solutions where we have a lot of knowledge that's easily accessible. What does it mean to complement it well? That's probably the next frontier also in terms of education.
Thank you so much. I think we're almost out of time, but I'll ask you all, if you were to lead the younger generations who are looking at now an AI-driven world and how to emerge in it as they graduate from college, as they move on into the workspace, what advice would you give them?
First, Professor.
No, I think it goes back to the same as organization, is you have to be adaptable. You have to be, a lifelong learner. We were speaking about that in the past. I would say in the past, 20 years ago, people had one career after they left college. Like they were marketing. Then, I would say 10 years ago, people started to have two careers. Now I think people may have multiple careers during their lifetime, and that's why you have to have that lifelong mindset, learning mindset embedded and keep up with everything that's going on. In some sense, the only thing we can do at the university is to teach you how to learn, right? We're not giving you the final knowledge, and you want to go out with that hunger for learning going forward.
Would completely agree with Omar. You've got to be open-minded, have a learning mindset, and be fast, because I think the time is running out. So it's important that you get out of the limitations of the past, as I said. AI opens up equally exciting degrees of freedom. Find your excitement and motivation there.
So people completely agree with both gentlemen. But what we are seeing in our talent group, that students who are coming out of college, even if they are not from computer science, they were doing some industrial design, and they are the best resource possible. And that is because adaptability, openness, and this is the best opportunity for students ever it was presented to them, that you may not be a computer science engineer, but if you are open, you can still be one of the best in the AI world.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.